Yeah, good evening, everybody. Firstly, I would like to congratulate all the winners. It's always a pleasure to interact with you all. We take this opportunity to talk about a couple of areas in data center. One, NxtGen is very proud to announce that we have launched a product called on-premise data center along with Emerson. We offer data centers which are integrated, completely integrated, and can be built in a small form factor in the sense that the data center can be as small as a single rack. So it's a self-contained unit which has the cooling, the power, and the redundancy is built into it. Right? So it starts from as small as a single rack, and it can scale as your business volume grows. Right? So some of the challenges, both jointly NxtGen and Emerson, when we interact with people like you, that we've realized is that key challenges are, if my business grows, what happens to my data center, right? Or how do I size my data center? Should I start small? Can it grow along with my business? Or would I land up with an egg in my face if I create a very small infrastructure and my business has a larger growth? So these are some of the challenges that we hear from people, and we feel that we have got a very interesting product which could possibly address such kind of situations. That's one. Second is, having a data center is nice. Your application starts running. What happens next, right? You're here on a Friday evening, and God forbid, if there is some issue related to the data center, how are you even going to be aware? Who contacts whom? What happens at the facility? We offer a value around the data center, so it's not just a physical entity which is set up at your premise, but this data center is constantly monitored from a central NOC, right? So we're not talking about the IT part of it. I'm sure you have enough and more people to support in the IT, but we're talking about a solution which can actually look into your non-IT piece and constantly monitor it, right? So we talk about offering you information like health, the utilization, right, and performance of all of these components. So that's the value proposition that we are talking about here. So we'll be more than willing to listen to you, take some of your viewpoints on this and questions if there are any.
I think data center, lot of questions come up. Actually, I take a lot of, I carry series on data centers. So many questions that IT managers come up. Then surprisingly, it is silent. So maybe you should, in terms of what are the critical components that you think are important in data centers that in the current day scenario, when there's so much of ambiguity around data center, the various models of data centers, what are the things that they need to look at?
So the basic thing, when you go for a data center, you have to understand what sort of data center you're making, whether it's a compute intensive or a transaction intensive. And the thing is that data center is not only, it's very easy to, I'll not say easy, but it's much more simpler to, manage the various IT components because you have expertise in that. But when you look at the data center, you have to first off look at the building, you have to look at the power supply, you have to look at how you're going to do the flooring part, the architecture part, a lot of civil works, a lot of mechanical works, a lot of electrical works, which needs a lot and more complex, managing more and more complex team, and then allocating the resources for that. And then when you don't know that how long it's going to last, because according to Moore's law, your server may be lasting for 18 months and 24 months, but you can't be changing your cooling unit or your the power architecture every year or every once in every 2 years. So you have to see that how you're going to make it much more viable in the way the business is growing. Sometimes business grows very quickly, sometimes it slows down. So how you're going to manage that? So the adaptability of it. So these are the major challenges what we came across when because Emerson has a body called Data Center User Group, which is primarily in the US, and when we throw all these questions, we get all these concerns. And the most important part is the compliance of all this things. Whether you're doing all these things, are you compliant with all the standards like for the ASHRAE standards for the cooling or IEEE standards, security compliance and all. And then eventually come to the uptime part, that how uptime it is, how redundant it is. So all these are the majority of the complexities come from the the IT managers and the CIO, because they are expert in managing the IT operation. But whatever the facility, which is mix of all those things. Somebody told about Bangalore Road, like you have narrow roads, how you're going to drive so many cars. So even if you have a Ferrari, but if your road has a potholes, how you're going to drive that? So you really need to have a robust infrastructure to sustain all those expensive IT equipment you are housing. So that's where it all goes on, and that's where we are coming what Satish talked about, that how we understand the need of the customer in terms of how they are growing, what are their pain areas, and how we can help them also remote monitoring and servicing and all those parts. So these are the things usually which come across when we discuss about data center.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Satish and Ankesh. Any questions that you may have? Probably the last question.
Now that we just spoke about compliance to various standards, be it on the HVAC system, the electrical subsystem, the plumbing, whatever it is, from the data center perspective. You said you have a solution which does the entire monitoring and management. How do you actually monitor and manage compliance to various standards?
See the products what we are using, the if you see the entire hardware part and the product what is being used, like cooling components, and what are the best practices available in terms of the redundancy of the cooling, like if one unit goes fail, what happens, and if there is a change in environment, or how you're going to save energy. So ASHRAE and all these bodies, they come up with all these guidelines. In fact, recently we are also compliant with the EPA guideline, which is a global guideline. It's mostly very prominent in US. In India, this Bureau of Energy Efficiency and CII is coming up with a guideline for the data center. But what we are doing, we in terms of cooling, we are providing something like digital compressor, which is as good as your 5-star cooling what you have for your typical precision coolings. But as of now in India, there is no guideline specific in terms of what goes into the data center. But what are the global standard? What is there to get your maximum uptime? Like if you are saying you want tier 3 data center, to be a tier 3, there are certain norms. Like if you remove some plug, or if some system is down, your data center needs to be on. So we plug all those holes through whatever the products or hardware what we are offering. And from monitoring point of view, what we are doing with the OPDC and NxtGen. NxtGen has an NOC in Bangalore. What we are offering, we understand the customer's concern that if my servers goes down, I know how to manage it. But I really don't know how many people to call about and check the health of the UPS or the battery. I'm not expert in that, and I don't have a resource to put full time over there. So what we are doing, we are providing device, a monitoring device, which can actually our NOC will see what is the health of your facility, and that the promptness and the alertness will get that this is something going to get wrong. So before it's going to get wrong, or before you're going to even call for a service, that we can take care of your entire IT infrastructure which is there.
I think there is one more question.
I just want to add a point to the question. See, most of the compliance standards today, if you look at the uptime standards or the DAA standards, they talk a lot in terms of availability. The focus is more on the availability. I mean, to be fair, yes, data center is expected to be, like someone pointed out, 100% of the time you prefer a data center to be up and running, right? So all of these standards are really focused on the availability criteria. But we may also want to look at, today, PUE is becoming a norm in data center. It's no longer a rarity, right? When we talk about PUE, we actually talk about the efficiency of the data center. It's not just about a data center which is up and running all points in time. The more important factor today is the operational cost related to a data center, right? So the lower the PUE, the more cost effective the operations of a data center are, right? So the monitoring solution from NxtGen today can actually help you understand what is the cost that is going on into your data center, managing a data center day in and day out, right? So we actually closely look at the facility, how how much power is being consumed. Is all the power actually relevant, or can you do some savings in your power consumption, right? So one of the things that we work closely with the customers is to try and tie it to some kind of expenditure, right? So we say we'll work out on a specific model with the customer to ensure that the investment that they put on a data center, they're able to recover within a finite period of time. So today, you have tools, you have certain ability to actually look very closely to fine granularity to the extent of seeing how much each device is consuming, right? And is it related to the utilization of the particular device? So you generally today in the market, when you come across a situation where most often the IT people or the facility people in the data center have a situation where they feel that they have actually utilized the data center. when we go closer and we do the analytics, we realize that there is almost 30 to 40% of stranded power available within the data center, which they can put to good use, right? So, what we try and deliver is, of course, we try and deliver the basic standards which are required in the data center, but we also try and bring in a lot more visibility to what is happening inside the data center. I hope we answered the question.
It's not
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
I think another challenge what I find from a lot of IT people is so what are the parameters that one needs to follow in terms when they decide to go on a colo model or cloud solution or in-house captive? Is there any kind of framework that you would probably recommend?
That's typically very much with the business need. Of course, if someone is coming up with a data center which is like more than 100 racks and 200 racks, and they know that what is their requirement and how it's going to be, and they're very particular about it. So of course, they will go for captive data center. But again, the way the cloud is coming up, the way it is getting popular, and if you have a compliance and if you have everything in place and you have investment in place and you want to see that how you want to utilize the service and grow as you are pay as you are growing or as you are utilizing the services. That is what the major concern. So of course you choose like that. So it's completely depend on your business model. I think Satish will add a good value because they offer the cloud services also in data center.
Yeah, in our experience, what we have seen is, a captive data center is a good way to start, right? Obviously, you would like to have your infrastructure in-house, right? And if you have the ability to manage it, why not? It's good to have it in-house. But what is the limit, right? To what extent can you keep growing in-house, right? So that's when, maybe you may want to look at options today as cloud, right? And cloud is available, on a hosted model or it's available on-premise. So we have various flavors of private cloud today, right? So, we work very closely with customers to understand, what is the limit of infrastructure that you want to acquire and manage? And at what level would you want to outsource, right? Typically for bursty traffic and applications, the tendency is to go to a cloud and use it, right? And for your core applications, people still prefer to keep it in-house and run it from their own facility.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.